All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be reviewing Open Carry by Marc Cameron. Now, maybe you saw my video earlier this month. It was titled something like Strange and Disturbing Things Happen in the Barnes & Noble. In that video, I discovered that Marc Cameron, who also he collaborates with Tom Clancy, he collaborates with the dead Tom Clancy on the Jack Ryan novels. He's got the Marc Cameron here. And, he's done probably half a dozen of the Jack Ryan novels. Anyway, that's where I knew Marc Cameron from, is because I collect the Jack Ryan stuff. When I was in the Barnes & Noble the other day, I was looking at the Western section, and I found this book, this Western by Mark Henry, and I was like, that looks like a good Western. And then I was over there in the thriller section, and I was like, oh, Marc Cameron also has his own series. I will pick this up. So I bought both of these books on the same day. Wasn't until I got in my car later and I was looking through them that I realized that Marc Cameron and Mark Henry are the same guy. He writes under a pseudonym. I don't know which one's his real name. I think it might be Cameron, might be Henry. I don't know. Maybe his real name is something completely different from these. I do know that the guy is an ex-policeman. It's partly why I bought his books, because I can support that. Because if you followed my channel, I work in law enforcement too. Anyway, and not only that, but Marc Cameron, Mark Henry, or whatever his name is, lives in Alaska. I grew up in Alaska. Another connection. We're both writers. We're both dudes from Alaska that work in law enforcement that turned into writers. I think I gotta support the guy's stuff. Let's talk about the cover first, because I love graphic design and cover illustration, so let's give this one a go. I do like the cover, even though this cover has absolutely nothing to do with the story at all. It's still a great picture from Alaska. In fact, I think I might know exactly where this photo was taken. If you are on the road to Mount Denali, you get on one of these buses and it takes you on a 3-hour trip out to Mount Denali across a dirt road. And there's several stopping points, and at one of the stopping points, they've got all these caribou horns sort of outside of the rest area, just laying in the grass. And I think that is where, because I think that's the Alaska Range back there, and I think that's one of those caribou horns off the Denali path. I could be wrong. So, in the introduction to this, or actually in the afterword to this book, Marc Cameron lets us know where he got the idea for this story. And he took a trip to Prince Wales Island, the town of Craig, Prince Wales Island, a long time ago. And while he was there, he got the idea for this sort of murder mystery that could take place in that location. And so eventually he wrote the story he wanted to write about that. What is it about? Well, first of all, even though I grew up in Alaska, I grew up in Fairbanks, which isn't anywhere near Prince Wales, Alaska, or Craig, Alaska. So I had to Google these two spots just to see if they were actual places, because a lot of times mystery writers, thriller writers, they'll set some of their stories in fictionalized towns like Castle Rock, Maine, or Derry, Maine, like Stephen King does. But no, it turns out Prince of Wales and Craig are actual places in Alaska. Very, very, very remote places. Cleared down there by Juneau and all of those islands down there, like Baranof Island and Prince of Wales Island. Anyway, the story starts out with Millie Burkett. She's a Tlingit Indian. And she is running through the forest. And Cameron does a dynamite job of just describing the forest on Prince of Wales Island as this haunting cathedral like big, huge cathedral-like trees just soaring to the sky. He describes it with so much grace. I just actually fell in love with his writing just from the first chapter of watching this Tlingit Indian flee through the forest as someone's chasing her anyway. Something happens to her, and then in comes our main guy, Arliss Cutter of the Fugitive Task Force. He used to do the job in Florida, now he's doing the job up in Alaska, and he's got a young team of police with him. Now, Arliss Cutter is about 42 years old in this book, and his young team is got a lot of different characters on it, one of which is Lola Fontaine. Now, there's a scene early on in this book where some of the young cops make a joke about Lola Fontaine's name sounding like a stripper name. And Arliss Cutter sort of takes those cops aside and chews them out. Like, we don't do that. That's like, HR is going to be all over us if you say that your female compatriot's name is like the same as a stripper name. Now, I'll be honest, I work in law enforcement. On the scale of 1 to 10 of the type of insults the law enforcement people that adore each other throw back and forth, saying someone's name sounds like a stripper name is like doesn't even register in the 1 out of 10 scale. It's like a negative. It's not even on the scale. It's like there are a billion worse insults that get thrown around a police force amongst cops that adore each other and love each other and are just having camaraderie. So immediately I was like, this Arliss Cutter's got a stick up his ass. Why is he freaked out because his team is joking around? Pretty innocent jokes too. And I was like, is this Arliss Cutter a character I'm going to even like or relate to? Because I just don't see that. I mean, that guy, he's getting upset about the wrong kind of things here. And then I was thinking, okay, well, our main author was a police guy. Is that the way he was as a police guy? Well, I probably shouldn't correlate the way he writes a character with himself personally, so I can't say that. But just looking at his photo, he looks like a much more competent police guy than I ever was. So I don't know. But then later on, Arliss Cutter, he loosens up a little bit. In fact, so I shouldn't have dwelt upon that one character trait that was built into the character early on, because they have to go do a sort of a SWAT team sort of thing on this guy named Donut Woodruff, and he lives in a 4-story kind of beat up hotel / whorehouse, and just the kind of like the conversations that happen as they're making their way to this SWAT thing that they've got to do, and as they're gearing up for the SWAT thing, the conversations that happen between the team, and there's a lot of people on this team, by the way, that happened, it just actually made me like Arliss Cutter a little bit more. I could tell that he wasn't the stick in the mud that I thought he was to begin with. But there were some lines that were brilliantly written that just let you kind of know that Arliss, he's kind of a no-nonsense guy. Most everybody else around him has a pretty good sense of humor about things, but Arliss is like a no-nonsense kind of guy. In fact, one of the great lines that Cameron put in here was that, what was it? It says, it would have made Cutter smile if he were the smiling sort. And that's basically about one of the jokes that was told. I thought that was a good line. Anyway, this is definitely an engaging book right from the beginning, where they go to do this SWAT maneuver on this dude named Donut in the whorehouse, and he's a drug dealer. I won't get into how the SWAT maneuver went, but it goes ass over teapot real fast, and the fact that it doesn't go off smoothly, and that that Arliss Cutter has to improvise, and all of the other people have to improvise, it's absolutely a brilliantly written scene. So right out of the gate, just within the first 30 or 40 pages, I'm loving this book. Absolutely loving this book. I want to know what happened to the Tlingit girl that was fleeing through the woods in the prologue, and then now I'm really invested in this SWAT team of different cops with their different personalities. And then we get to meet another character. By the way, there is a lot of characters in this little book, Which so if you're one of those types of readers that has a hard time keeping track of a lot of characters, you might want to keep that in mind, because there are a ton. One of which is Carmen Delgado. Now, she's a TV producer for this reality show that's being filmed in Craig, Prince of Wales Island, and the TV show is called The Fishwives. She wanted it to be like, the world's most dangerous catch or whatever, but it ended up being like this, more of this world's most dangerous catch mixed with Hollywood Lives or Beverly Hill Wives, or the rich wives of Salt Lake City, or whatever. You get the point. It turned into more of a soap opera about the fishwives, about the wives of the fishermen. And she's very disappointed, yet she's wrapped into this contract. She's got to film the show. It just so happens to be taking place in this same area. And then we get a whole group of Cesarios, like a whole big mess of Mexican cartel gangsters that are up there doing bad things in the gold mines and laundering money through this small little seaport. And there's a ton of characters with it. Anyway, all of those storylines meld together into just a great, great murder mystery with some devilish villains. The Mexican cartel guys are just brutal villains that Arliss Cutter and his team of SWAT people, I guess it's a team of fugitive task force people. Anyway, there's a lot of side plots in this, folks. A lot of side plots with all the different police officers, with the TV producer, and then side plot after side plot just with the Mexican cartel gangs. It was actually, a lot of stuff was packed into this small novel and done very, very well. The only problem I have is this cover does not represent what Prince of Wales Island looks like at all. And if you've been to Alaska, you know what I'm saying. But that's still a pretty badass cover. Also, open carry. Open carry, I guess that refers to the state of Alaska must be an open carry, like Utah where I live. It must be an open carry state, where if you want to carry a gun on your belt, like Clint Eastwood in Good and the Bad and Ugly, and you just want to walk around town, you're free to do so. It's an open carry state. So I think that is what the title means. Again, the title has nothing to do with anything with the plot. All those things aside, this was a fucking awesome book. This was an awesome book, and I'm looking forward to getting the rest of the Arliss Cutter series, which I think there are 4 books out total in the series. But anyway, I'm giving this a 9.9 out of 10, and I'm only dropping it like a fraction of a point for the title and the cover.